No, thank you for bringing this to my attention because I did use the term due process in a prior video I made about disruptive physicians. And I probably shouldn't have used that term because it likely has a very specific legal definition that I honestly don't know about and probably has more meaning than what I was trying to convey. So I want to come back and just clarify that I likely shouldn't have used the word due process in that prior video. It's kind of like in psychiatry, there's like competency to stand trial, which is a very legal term and definition, versus capacity for decision making, which is a more clinical situation. And I want to come back to say that my general point that I was trying to make in my video about disruptive physicians is not that there isn't any rules or process or procedures when it comes to medical board hearings, peer review committees, credentialing agencies. I'm aware that there are policies and procedures written on paper. What I'm trying to convey to people, particularly physicians, is that if you think as a physician that you are going to be represented fairly, treated fairly in these, just because you're a physician, just because something's written on paper, you may have a rude awakening coming to you. Before I left the VA hospital for my new position, I was named a party to a tort claim, basically a lawsuit. So when you work for the federal government, you cannot be sued directly as a provider. When the individual brings on a lawsuit, they're essentially suing the federal government. But if a judgment is made against you, let's say if something actually did go to a trial or a hearing, or if the VA decides to settle, then you can still be reported to the National Practitioner Data Bank. And if you go back and to the original video that I stitched, the doctor in there was talking about how career ending it can be for a physician to get reported to the National Practitioner Data Bank. It can make it hard for you to get hired, to get credentialing, to get malpractice insurance when you are reported there. So it's not a small thing. And honestly, I worked in the VA for many, many years before I realized that if the VA decides to settle, again, they're representing the federal government. Yet technically they're representing you on behalf of the federal government, but if they're deciding to settle, you have no say-so in that. You don't have your own attorney. You're basically having the VA attorney. And, if they decide to do that and report you, that's it. You have no say-so. And there's been physicians I've known who that's happened to. Literally whole lawsuits and hearings and proceedings went down. They literally had no involvement in it. And the next thing they knew, they got an alert that they had been reported to the National Practitioner Data Bank. And so I just want to communicate that part of it. And in this tort claim that I was named to, the individual was basically alleging that they were being over-medicated. Now, this is an individual who had, of course, some mental health challenges and was not prescribed any psychiatric medicine scheduled. They were only prescribed a very specific sleep medicine that they asked me for. And so I think it was very surprising to get that, but I understood that probably some of this was likely due to that individual's mental state at the time, because there were some other things going on that were likely contributing to this person's mental state deteriorating. And so the thing is, I had continued to see this person. So I was still having active appointments, even though this lawsuit was basically pending. So I went to my direct supervisor and said, look, I don't think this is going anywhere. Like, factually, this person is not on a lot of medication and has never even told me they're having symptoms on what they're on. Like, I've just seen them not that long ago. I don't think this is going anywhere. I said, but I don't think I should continue to see this person when there's an active lawsuit. That doesn't make sense for me. And he was like, no, you should continue to see him. Didn't bat an eye. So I went above him to our chief of mental health, who also gave me the same message and told me that if I have a problem, I should talk to the risk manager. I just told you earlier that the people who are in risk management and the attorneys, they are not working on directly behalf of me. They're working on behalf of the VA. So I have learned from previous experience that if I'm going to go and talk to them, I have to be very careful because they're not my attorneys. They're the federal government's attorneys. Okay. And things that you say to them and interactions you have with them can be used in a certain way. Even though technically you're on that quote same side with them, they're not representing you or your interest. And so I never did talk to the risk manager. And that was actually one of the very last nails in the coffin of me continuing in that position. I knew I wanted to leave that position, and it was not a very good work environment for multiple reasons. But I know enough to know that if I'm being sued by somebody and I'm continuing to see them, that puts me at risk. And the thing is, I was instructed by my supervisor and the chief of mental health not to speak to this person about the lawsuit, but I'm seeing them and they're claiming to be over medicated. So I'm just showing up, pretending like I don't have this lawsuit here. This person hasn't expressed a concern. When I did see them, I'm like, do you want to keep on the medication? Yes, but they're saying they're being over medicated. So to me, that's putting me in a very precarious situation and it really led me to see like, these people don't care about my license. I'm not quite sure what they have going on, but they don't care what happens to me as an individual. And that's what I came to understand. And that's what I'm trying to communicate to people. And this is probably not just for physicians, anyone in healthcare, because nurses get a lot of issues too. And there have been a lot of high profile cases of things that have happened with nurses too. So, and probably other healthcare providers this would apply to. But I am here to tell you that these risk managers, these hospital attorneys, they work on behalf of the hospital. They are not working on behalf of you. And when you work in the VA, it's even more complicated because to go out and try to get outside representation when you're named to a claim there's complexities to it because technically you're supposed to be represented by the federal government and you're not being sued directly. There's a lot of complexity to it. So don't think that it's like an easy fix, even if you do try to get someone to advise you personally, because I did in another matter try to get somebody to advise me personally and I couldn't get anyone outside of an attorney who would really want to work with me. They were just confused about the process. They're like, well, don't you have an attorney? No. They're like, what? I mean, in tort law and all that stuff, it's a whole thing. So I say all that just to say that I would not be so open and trusting of hospitals and peer review committees and all this stuff. If you have the chance to get your own representation, get it as early as possible. I would be very concerned about, speaking to hospital administrators and things of that nature when these situations arise, because often your best interest is not their best interest.